Is there an English equivalent to the Russian saying the baker never buys his bread? I heard a good Russian saying that I like, which is, the baker never buys his bread, as in, bakers aren't wealthy people, but at least they always have bread. Kind of like if you were a shop mechanic, at least you'd be able to fix your car when it breaks down. The problem is, when I use it, people don't understand the idiom, then I have to explain it. Is there something similar in English? I feel like there is.
The proverb in English is the baker never wants for bread. Although this is not exactly well known, the meaning is clear and shouldn't need an explanation. Sentence edited, see comment by Marlu A. Example. Labor has a golden soil and the baker never wants for bread. The Southern Literary Messenger. This URL. Note, X never wants for Y was once a common idiom. It has declined in use these days. Sentence edited, see comment by Janus Bajake. For example, his daughter is a spoiled brat. She never wants for anything.
There is an English proverb, actually, frequently attributed as a Chinese proverb, that is widely used that goes, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. The nuance is not the same, but it does have the gestalt of elevating the destitute and feeding the hungry. You might get your point across without having to dissect if you substitute a fisherman or fishmonger for your baker. A man who knows how to fish never goes hungry. A fisherman never has to buy a meal. Doesn't have quite the same ring to it, though. Unfortunately, I have not been able to trace the Ops proverb, and not through lack of trying. The closest English proverb that I did find is said to originate from Norfolk. If you keep a fairy loaf you will never want bread. Encyclopedia of Fairies in World Folklore and Mythology, 2013. An older variation has, if you keep a fairy loaf in the house, you will never want for bread. Signs, Omens and Superstitions, 1918, by Astruciello. A fairy loaf, also called a Pharisee loaf, was the name given for fossil echini, a fossilized sea urchin, which was sometimes discovered after ploughing the fields. Pharisee for fairy seems to be a Sussex thing. Fossil echinoids which looked like bread loaves were called both fairy loaves and Pharisee loaves there. They were once used as charms when baking to make the bread rise to the right shape. Probably, Pharisee is just a corruption of the word fairy. Leprechauns, fairies and little people. An image of an echinoid shows how people might have been fooled into thinking these were ancient miniature loaves of bread. There is however a common Italian dialect proverb that goes, Piedmont, Chia la un mestpilla man, a j manca mai pai pan, Italian, chi ha un mestiere in man, dappertutto trova pan dizionario dei proverbi italiani e dialettali. Which loosely translated means, he who has a trade will never be short of bread. A similar German proverb, Jegliches Handwerk nach seinen Mann. The English equivalent is, which rhymes and makes perfect sense. A trade in hand finds gold in every land. Source, Dictionary of European Proverbs.
Converting my comment to an answer. I would think the more appropriate phrasing to convey the meaning you want would be something like, the baker never needs to buy bread. I can't think of a common English version of this idiom off the top of my head, but I think this would be more understood than how you've currently translated it.
The issue with the translation in your question is that the use of the word "his" can be unclear.
The baker never buys his bread.
This can be interpreted in two ways, the way you intend, I'm guessing, and another, more negative way.
The baker always has bread, so he doesn't need to buy the bread for his table. The baker doesn't like his own bread, so he gets bread from another bakery. My version of this statement removes the ambiguity, and only allows the first interpretation.
Regardless of all of this, there's nothing in the English version that gives any implication that the baker is poor, only that his work gives him the bread he needs for the day. I don't know the Russian saying or what the actual meaning of it is, but in English, there's a sub-definition of bread that implies all food, or sustenance, not strictly bread.
It's most notably part of the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. So, I suppose the concept of literal bread being the bare minimum for the more figurative bread could get you a little bit of that implication of surviving on the bare necessities of life.
Additionally, if you want to be pedantic, you could argue that, technically, he does pay for the ingredients, so he does still buy it to some degree.
Similar concept that I thought of when thinking through this answer.
Don't go to the barber with the best haircut. This is more similar to the second case I mentioned above. Barbers can scarcely be expected to cut their own hair, so the one with the best haircut is clearly not the best barber.
It's the person who cut his hair.
I have a dad who is a former breadman, and he would use the phrase, "The breadman always brings home the bread." Usually referring to himself. It's not an exact match, but it's similar enough. It's a similar idiom to the term bringing home the bacon, referring to the primary money earner of a household. You could see it as a morphism of that phrase. Due to the US's capitalist economy, you might see the phrase bringing home the bacon as the equivalent, because although the primary money earner of a household doesn't necessarily make the bacon, they generate the wealth which is used to buy it. I imagine there are many more laborers in the US who make references to this phrase when referring to their chosen profession. A butcher, for example, would use the phrase bringing home the bacon as a direct subversion of the original meaning, referring to the literal bacon he or she etc. brings home, and not the money. However, for other working persons, it could be bringing home the orange juice, the ice cream, the TVs, the cars, or any other number of physical goods, as a morphed version of the original phrase. In my dad's case, he didn't bake the bread though, he delivered it.
If you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing.